Hey everyone, it's Seth Schachner, your host for Breaking Down the Biz. We have a really special episode today. It's with someone basically extremely special in the world of music and now film and television. It's Kerry Gordy, the son of Motown's founder, Berry Gordy. And we're going to have a really interesting chat that spans everything from the early days of Motown to something really cool he's done with Netflix recently. It's going to look a little bit different than our typical episodes. We recorded it back before the year ended last year, Christmas time, and before we had some of our stuff together with the current production. But it's still the same me, same episode, same discussion for Breaking Down the Biz. Hope you enjoy it. So I really appreciate it. Your being here. Maybe we could just start with the tiniest bit of background that you're comfortable with. And I know we want to talk about Sunday Guest most of the time.
Okay. Well, if you want to get a little bit of background, I was born a black poor child. No, I was. I had the fortunate. I was fortunate to be born in the place in Detroit called Motown. I was brought home to that blue building that everybody knows as the Hitsville Studios. As a child, straight from the hospital. So the Motown started the year that I was born. My father, my mother and father founded it, and my father obviously took it to a whole nother level, right?
Yeah.
And so I grew up from 0 to 4. Knowing that all of these people, whether it was Diana Ross or Stevie Wonder or Smokey Robinson or Marvin Gaye or the Temptations or the Four Tops.
Oh my gosh.
They all, I realized something early. Oh my gosh, these people are some of the biggest stars in the world, and they all look up to my family because we were the people who were providing them the marketing and the visibility to be seen by the world, right?
Yeah.
So I learned a lot from that. I went through, grew up, saw all these people, and by the way, these people, they weren't not like stars to me. They were like family members, right? So Marvin Gaye was really my uncle because he was married to my aunt. But more than that, he was a great friend. And Stevie Wonder, still to this day, is just an amazing friend and a perfect person. He's just a good guy.
Yeah.
And Smokey Robinson, the guy who wrote "My Girl." I guess you say, what can make me feel this way? My girl.
Right.
So I had the pleasure and the privilege of being brought up around all of these amazing superstars.
Yeah.
So as I became a young adult at 14 years old, I went into the mailroom for 3 years at Motown, and I learned the ergonomics of how it works. Everything from A&R to marketing to business affairs to finance. And for 3 years, I was very inquisitive, and I went around asking everybody, well, what do you do? And blah, 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 and this and that. And I came to the conclusion that I wanted to be a rock star. So then I created this teen idol band with Benny Medina and Tina Marie. I don't know if you guys know Tina Marie, but
remember both those names. Yeah.
Square this to you, baby. Square this. Right? And I need your loving and the whole shot. So she was in my band as a teenager, and that was a great thing. And Benny Medina was also in my band. He became the manager to the stars, everybody from Jennifer Lopez to P. Diddy to Babyface to Mariah Carey to everybody, Tyra Banks.
No, that's awesome. So now, you and I, are we same? We don't have to get the exact date, but what dates are we talking about? What were you born in the 60s? And we're of a similar vintage, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I was born in actually 59.
Okay, so you're a little bit older than I am, but you saw music, and I don't know when you moved out from Motown, from Detroit to LA, but you saw it when it was strong and it was an actually robust business with real stars and labels and people buying, not all the streaming and tech, right?
Yeah, I saw it when artist development was a thing,
Mm,
where we as a company made sure that our acts had class and style and very rehearsed and very
yeah.
poised and proper and clean cut and the whole shot. There were prerequisites that our artists had to have in order to be on Motown because we didn't want to be confrontational. We just wanted to make great music. It just happened that most of our artists were black, but we were making pop music. We weren't making race music. We were making music for everybody. We
Yeah.
called it the sound of young America.
And so what was Motown at the time? Was it an indie label? Or, I mean, I worked at something that became Universal. I remember I was around then when it went in, but what was the trajectory in terms of its independence and broad base?
Motown was totally financed by my family starting with an $800 loan from his parents,
Well,
from my father's parents, right? And so we were self-funded the whole time, and we were an independent company for the whole time until the last few years.
okay.
And so we had independent distributors all over the country that would distribute our product.
Oh,
So we were at one time obviously the biggest independent record label, and at one time it was like us, A&M, Stax, and Atlantic. Those were the big independent labels,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
And then the majors, it was Columbia at the time, which is now Sony, and then you said MCA,
yeah,
which is Universal now,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
A-
yeah.
and Warner Brothers. And so what happens is that at a certain point they decided that they were going to gobble up all the independents. And what happens is as they were gobbling up all the independents, then the the other independent companies were going out of business because
Mhm.
they could not keep enough product within the independent distributors to make it make sense. So
Hmm.
everybody ended up having to make a distribution deal with the majors,
Yeah,
and we ended up making a distribution deal with MCA.
yeah, okay.
Which, by the way, MCA was last place in the black
I
music
I
division.
remember I remember it was the smallest of what we would call the big six, yeah.
That's right. But the day they took over Motown's distribution, they became number one overnight.
It's interesting because my first gig, I mean, firstly, what an amazing story and privilege to just, from your background. I mean, obviously extraordinary. Now, definitely we could spend another hour on your views of artists and seeing people up front because I do want to talk about artists. But it's interesting. Like those of us who worked in music, I guess I started as a foot soldier too, and I always probably had similar love for it that you did, and but had a certain door in, which was they said, oh, I have a master's in business associate, I have an MBA, and they're like, look, the finance department's down there.
Right.
I'm like, wait, what the hell? Man, what the fuck? I love rock. I love alternative pop.
Right. Right.
I want to be, and the torture I took. I won't name names. These people are all friends of mine, but my first real gig in music was MCA. It was a holding company, and it was on Universal City, and the company had an amazing story too. Lou Wasserman, and going way
Right.
back to Chicago, and probably some funky stuff when they even started. But
Right.
I remember we had really strong positioning in Nashville, and I don't know if it was specifically Motown, but we had some hip hop, Big Daddy Kane, if I recall. We had some stronger positioning there than we just did in rock, and their strategy was, yeah, I mean, they combined with Polygram. I think the Bronfmans came in and then suddenly went from 6 to 1 or something.
Right.
And I saw this too, what you're describing, like with the market share stuff. Like, I worked at Sony Latin for a bunch of years, and there was a period of time when an entity called Univision came on the market, and Universal
Right.
scooped it up. We thought it was for market share. We didn't want to buy unless it was profitable. So whatever, different strategies. Yeah, but so no, that's really awesome. I mean, so do you see? I mean, maybe zipping up today, if you can extract away all the parallels, that distribution obviously isn't the same, physical isn't the same. But like when you just given what you're describing, do you see parallels in the market today or even in your own experience in music, whether it's labels or managers or just groups of artists?
Well, there's always parallels. There's always certain type of artists, whether they're boy bands or you have that one female artist, whether it's a Taylor Swift or whatever it is, right? Um, But there's always parallels. There's also parallels in marketing, even though the conduit is different, and the way that you get to the audience is different. The bottom line is you're still trying to get to 100 million people, so 1 million people will buy you. So the fact of the matter is that whatever that conduit is that takes you there, you want to make sure that you are very prevalent in that conduit. And whether that conduit is the internet or it could be airplanes, it doesn't matter. Wherever that demographic or psychographic audience resides that speaks to your brand, that's where you need to be.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting, because like I worked at Jive Records. Zamba was the name of the company around the turn of this past century, and little different story because like maybe unlike your father, who was able to, obviously capitalize. Our owner, a guy named Clive Calder, who stays out of the headlines, brilliant guy. I think to some degree saw what was going to happen to recorded music and kind of forcibly sold the company to BMG at the time. And, I don't know if he's ever come back actually.
Was Newport now there when you?
Yeah.
I loved him. He was great and ended up becoming the head of the Grammys. He's great. He's great.
Yeah, me too. He was a real gentleman to me. I remember when we had our children, Neil, and some of our other colleagues, Brian Roberts just reached out, and he's a sweet guy. But I mean, it was interesting because I saw a little bit of this at Jive, not the up close elements that you're describing. But had more than a little exposure to it, and I guess I wonder sometimes if there are entities like this in the market anymore that are substantive enough to really talk about, or if what I see now in the labels, and I was just out at the Latin Grammys meeting with a bunch of colleagues, like the distribution business seems like it's the way to do things. Like they I was at the party at the Orchard for example, and it was like I was at the Grammys or something. When I was at Sony,
Right.
like they didn't know I was going to talk about the Orchard. They thought the artists would be, oh no, we're going to leave. And they got Bad Bunny now, and that sort of distribution model seems like it's a higher value in the market than just the traditional label function. So
It's really funny. I was at one of the Comic-Cons about maybe 6 or 7 years ago. 6 or 7 years ago, and all of these bunnies were running around. And this one guy comes up to me, and I look at him and I say, "Now, who are you?" He says, "I'm Bad Bunny." And I said, "I've never heard of you." And he said, "You will." And boy, did we.
well, yeah, for sure. Oh, what's interesting though, you made a point earlier, like, I don't know how inclined towards social media you are, or either of us are, or, just given our age, like, whatever the appropriate way to look at it is. It's part of my life for sure. But, there's this critique now that some of the social media artists or the artists that break, don't have the longevity of some of the ones you mentioned from Motown, or even some of the Jive artists, that they'll come in and out, and it doesn't last on TikTok in the same way, it did if you were really working to develop an artist's career, taking risks, up and down records,
Well, the issue is, or I think the problem is that the internet and social media works on sensationalism. So before the internet, you really, really did have to have a specific level of talent. And by the way, it didn't mean that you had to be the greatest singer, because you could have been a great poet like Bob Dylan, right? Or you could be a great showman like Mick Jagger. They didn't have the greatest voices in the world, but they knew how to speak to a specific demographic and psychographic audience that believed in what they were saying or believed in what they were doing. And even with Madonna, a lot of people said, "Oh my God, she keeps reinventing herself." And the reason that she's so amazing because she does all these costumes. No, the reason that she's so amazing is because she comes up with great records, like A Virgin, Papa Don't Preach, Vogue. Those are great records, right?
Yeah.
Now, if somebody gets on the toilet and they say, "I'm on the toilet, I'm on the toilet, I'm on the toilet," they'll get 10 million views, and then some record executive that wants to take advantage of that audience will sign that person.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Or nowadays a robot will do it. Whatever. Yeah.
And it speaks to what you said. Okay, that's great, but it's only going to last for a season. That's the key.
Yeah. Also, maybe it isn't so great. I don't know. But there are artists, that appear to maybe have the same longevity that a Marvin Gaye will, or the Joni Mitchell will, that people will be listening to 20 years from now. I don't know, but obviously Taylor Swift's risen to a certain level. I think it's probably fair to say that Bad Bunny has as well.
Yeah.
But there's so much that I saw just inside the majors from legacy artists. That might be Miles Davis, it might be REO Speedwagon or something that people might frown at, but the music still means something to people 40 years later.
Yeah.
I try not to talk to my 20-somethings about it because they roll their eyes, and but to me it's still something, basically, that someone's got to have some songwriting chops. And I manage a few artists now on the side. I don't publicize it too much, but they're all really talented artists, actually. One of them plays with Janelle Monáe. One of them is a keyboardist for the guys from Oasis. The other two are just really upcoming artists. And it's so hard because when we present them to, call them gatekeepers, bookers, labels, distributors, you name it, the first question is, what's the size of the social media? How big is the Instagram? What's the TikTok? They don't care at all about the songs, So
See, that's a bigger problem. The bigger problem is that used to be our job as the record company. Our job was to popularize them. Their job was to give us great music. Now, if someone is very savvy on how to popularize themselves on the internet, they can get popular even though their music might not be the greatest. So to that end, I don't think this era would have seen a Stevie Wonder. I don't know if he would have known how to popularize himself, or Michael Jackson. He had to do, what he was phenomenal at. Not, he didn't have to have the two sides of the brain, right?
That's very tough, and you also just got to wonder the label spending, if it's done in the same way, because what I try and tell some of the artists I work with, and I want to get into Best Guest and what you're doing with Netflix as well. But, is like, without being explicit or discouraging, obviously, but to say, look, there's music stuff that's out there that it could be a sync, an associated with the brand. Certainly you want to get on the road and have a good booker, because that's a real source of income, unlike streaming. There are other pockets of professional things, showcases and gigs. But it's very, it's very, very different. And, getting a track, for example, synced into a Netflix show, it's not something that you can just snap your fingers and do. Basically, you can put your songs into every kind of licensing or sync engine there is, but you do still need someone to hear it on the show and say, hey, we think that would fit what our plot is, and then bring it in. And it's not an everyday process, for sure.
No, that's definitely a who type of scenario, right?
So you've got a really interesting background. You've worked, in some classic music functions with copyrights, right, and licensing. But you're definitely doing something super interesting with a great show called Best Guest. So wanted to definitely give you some time to talk about it a little bit, and going to have some follow-up questions about streaming and the landscape you're in as well.
Okay, so here it is. It's called Sunday Best, and it's on Netflix.
So sorry, I know Sunday Best. Yep.
And it's the untold story of Ed Sullivan. And the fact of the matter is that people don't know how amazing Ed Sullivan was and how important he was to the culture of today, because he was the first person to put on Black artists and to humanize them and to make people in the South understand that Black people didn't have tails, or they didn't have to be butlers and maids and talk, yes sir, boss. They didn't have to be that person.
Yeah.
And he gave us a chance to witness Nat King Cole and Sammy Davis Jr. and Ella Fitzgerald, and then later on Diana Ross and the Supremes and the Jackson 5, and he got to
James Brown too,
and he got to put us in front of a 35 to 50 million audience a week, and it was the place where Black people knew on Sunday night it was an event. They could see somebody that finally looked like them. I mean, Oprah was enamored by the fact that she could go see Diana Ross on a Sunday night on Ed Sullivan.
Ed Sullivan, yeah.
But the key is that he had to go through ridiculous scrutiny and just a negativity with all of the folks out there that did not want to turn television into something that was multiracial.
Mm.
I'm talking about everybody from the sponsors to the networks to the Ku Klux Klan to the governors out there. They did not want this to happen, and he put he put his foot down and said, "You know what? These are some incredibly talented people." I mean, he was born in Harlem, right?
Yeah.
So he was Irish, and
Yeah.
he was
Sullivan, Ed
like
Sullivan.
they were they were discriminating against him, calling them drunkards and all of this kind of stuff. And he said, "You know what? It's not fair. We're hardworking people, and for us to be categorized like that and not have a chance because of some ignorant people's thought process,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give these black people a chance because I think in a lot of instances they're more talented, right?" So
Yeah.
that's how it came along, because we would not know we would not know black culture had it not been for Ed Sullivan, because nobody put them on, nobody except him.
It's an important message, and Sunday best. Like I think a lot of Americans know him for obviously the Beatles and Elvis Presley, but this side seems much more impactful and actually meaningful and constructive in terms of what he did. You don't often hear this, do you?
No, but as a matter of fact, most people didn't even realize that the impact that he had on the culture. Because remember, the civil rights movement was going on there during that time, and obviously, you had Martin Luther King and Jesse Jackson and all of these people, but those movements would not have survived had they not had other factions like an Ed Sullivan or like a Motown Records or like the things that were happening in sports and so forth at the same time.
Oh,
So it was very important that he gave an audience to, a broad audience, and an audience that was well loved and respected by everybody, not just white people, everybody.
oh. And TV at the time, I'm going to state the obvious, but it was monolithic and huge. It wasn't like a scattered environment like we've got today, right? So
No question.
being on the Sullivan Show was being in America, one of the biggest things in America, right?
Can you imagine being on a show with 50 that had an audience of 50 million? I mean, that today is just unheard of. Unheard of.
Really tremendous. And then sort of how does it, like, in terms of like just chronology, like this is well before things like Soul Train or American Bandstand.
It was first. It was first. So he was the first person to actually have on black people, literally the first. And then obviously he's the first person to really popularize them in a positive and meaningful way. I mean, I have to give it to Margot Special, who is the granddaughter of Ed Sullivan, and she really wanted this side of the story told, as opposed to the Beatles
Yeah,
Elvis
sure.
side of the story told, because everybody knows that story, but people did not know the impact that he had on black culture, on urban culture, and on history, because history would be different had Ed Sullivan not been born.
When you think about like artists that came in the wake of some of these that kind of appealed more broadly or just across a lot of different, audiences, Sly and the Family Stone,
Yeah.
For sure, Prince,
Tina Turner.
Prince, obviously, who's, by the way, who the audience should know. We sort of have a connection that came through Prince's camp, actually, with Deborah and all the gang we met on Grammy night. But maybe he also helped set the stage for generations of future artists, right?
Well, I ran Paisley Park.
That I did not know.
Oh, you did not know? Yo, I ran Prince's company. I have I could let's see. You see this? I have all those are
Holy
gold
moly,
and
there you
platinum
go.
albums
Beautiful.
from Prince
Okay,
and
yeah.
everybody that I had a chance to deal with. Yeah.
No,
So
that's cool.
he was a a great artist to have. I had listen to this. When people say, "Boy, my artist is really tough," I say, "Dude, I had Prince, Rick James, and George Clinton."
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. No, that's
So
cool.
you
It's
got-
funny because it's funny just in the interconnectivity of the networks of the music industry. I've had some business dealings with folks that came out of Prince's business management camp. And, believe it or not, I'm even an investor in a brand of mezcal that came out of someone, Jackie Thompson, if you know her, who came out of the camp as well, who's doing a
Uh-huh.
bunch of entrepreneurial things from Minneapolis. But
Yep.
no, I mean, I think what's interesting is sort of one of the common threads is just artists that can appeal across different audiences, different generational lines. I mean, I think back to all the Prince shows I saw, some at 2 a.m. at Roseland Ballroom. The first one I ever saw was at Radio City, and it didn't feel like it was a white thing or a black thing or anything. It was just major great music that appealed to everyone. For sure, it was melodic and hard hitting, but it was a very American thing. And it was what an enormous loss that he's no longer with us.
Yeah, that was a shame.
So you've got to talk to me a little bit about the episodes and Netflix and just a little bit about the, the storylines, if you will.
Well, it's a documentary, so it's only one episode, which is his bio. It's a documentary about everything that he had to go through in order to make this happen, and his position in it, and why he felt the way he did, and he just thought that people were people, and people should be respected by the content of their character and by their talent, not by somebody's prejudiced thought of what someone should be like. Right?
Yeah.
He was truly amazing.
With Netflix, so how did it come about with them? Were they obviously supportive, but were they involved in the project? Did you have to bring it to them and pitch?
No, not at all. Which is part of the great process of it. Margot got with Raphael Marmor of Delirio Films, right? And they went through this great process with Sasha Jenkins, who is an amazing director, and came up with the concept that they wanted to do it from this perspective. I had done two previous projects with Sasha. We did the Rick James documentary and the Biz Markie documentary. And he just thought that I was the perfect executive producer to come on. So he pulled me in. And of course, my thing was, listen, if we're going to do it from this urban perspective, I'm totally all in, because this is the way that it really should be done. Because when I was a kid, that was the place that I would go to see talent. And I was so excited to see the Jackson 5 or Dinah Ross and the Supremes or the Temptations or Sly and the Family Stone or Tina Turner. It was amazing.
Love it, man. Love it that you saw Sly. And so just on the brass tacks, like the rights, the footage, actually getting licenses in place, was that an enormous endeavor for you? Or I guess that's CBS, right? Or Viacom? How did that happen?
No. What happens is that every time you're doing a project, and you're doing a musical project with such heritage and history, the rights are always really, really tough, because there's a plethora of rights that are owned by a plethora of people. So to that end, the problem with those rights is that the rights, it's not a compulsory license.
Right.
It's a license that the copyright owner can charge you anything they want to charge. They can charge you $1, or they can charge you $1 million. And so the fact of the matter is you want to try your best to get a favorite nations clause, so that everybody's paying the same thing. And for those people who don't want to do it, then you don't use those things unless it's something that you have to have, right?
Yeah.
But then you screw up your favorite nations. But in this case, the good thing is, I'd say 50% of the music was through people that own the Sullivan rights already. So it made that part of it a lot easier than it usually is in most instances. I mean, I
Yeah.
like to tell people, I like to make people think that I was involved and very important in making this thing happen. They're like, "You're the music guy. How did you get that done?" I don't want to say, well, my partner was Ed Sullivan's granddaughter.
Well, it helps, man. I mean, that's part of the reason. Um, so, because one of the things, like, just, whatever, intellectually, I look at the younger people now, my kids and younger, and they got very excited, for example, about, the reason Bob Dylan biopic, right? There was a Queen pick, around Live Aid, that sort of thing, and, like you, I've probably had some pretty direct, I was at Live Aid, I remember it, and it was cool to see it, but it's always interesting for me to see, the modern spin on legacy characters or artists like you're describing. And I wonder, like, is the docu format, like, do you think what you did is that going to be it? Or could you do it as, I don't know, maybe some different type of feature to engage other audiences or maybe just some thoughts on that?
Well, here's the thing. Every thing, every picture or movie or documentary that a producer or director does, it has to be unique in order to grab the attention of that demographic or psychographic that you're focusing on. The story needs to be great, because here's the thing. I could put out a documentary or a biopic on Bruce Springsteen or whoever it is, right?
Yeah.
And it could be great or it can be shitty. And the point is that if it's great, then people say, "Oh, biopics work."
Yeah.
Right? If it's not great, then people say, "Oh, biopics just don't work."
Right.
Right?
Right.
Recently, we've had some good ones. One of my buddies just put out a picture, John Davis song Sung Blue, right?
Yeah. Neil
I saw
Diamond
it.
pick. Yeah.
Yeah, Neil Diamond. It was a Neil Diamond fake band or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I love that picture. I just loved it. I thought it was good. I thought it was fun. I
Yeah.
thought it was amazing. But my point is that somebody could have put out the song about, one of those type of bands,
Yeah.
right? And if it didn't work, then the industry would have said, "Oh, we can't do any more of those," right?
Yeah. Well, the Springsteen picture with, all that great talent in it, I think the recent one, didn't do particularly well commercially. I mean, it was that.
Well, you know why?
Yeah.
You know why?
Hmm.
Because it wasn't that good. See,
Yeah.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. I mean, it wasn't that good. What it is that they decided, just like I decided, or my team decided to do the Ed Sullivan documentary from the civil rights perspective, and how it really, how he was a champion for all music,
Yeah.
including Black music. That was our perspective. We could have done it from any perspective. They could have done the Bruce Springsteen perspective from a Born in the USA perspective,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But they decided to do it from a real eclectic artist perspective, right?
Yeah.
And the point is that doesn't really get the audience excited about him wanting to do an album that was just, a middle of the road type of album. Right?
Totally. No, I
So
totally hear you.
that was the concept that they took. So they could have done that movie 1,000 different ways, and they decided
Yeah.
to do it that way. I would have never done that, because everything that I do has to feel like it's entertaining. It's got to be entertaining, and I love entertaining and educational.
It's interesting because there are definitely some music things that come out. Tom Hanks did a picture a while ago called "That Thing You Do."
Yeah.
That kind of looks at the idea of a band having a single hit. That this is a fascinating story. I mean, not the greatest picture ever. I even looked at these franchises because I don't think the music the stuff that you're describing is represented broadly enough. I mean, even I think about like the heavy metal thing, the comedy Spinal Tap, that is still, the original one goes on. People still watch it after 40 years, basically.
Yep.
It's still a thing. So, okay. So what, I mean, does it stay in the Netflix world? Do you think you might do more with it, or maybe what would be your next project if you're going to move on to something else?
Well, first of all, I think that this pretty much stays in the Netflix world. It's been received so incredibly well, and it's always one of the most liked on Netflix, and I really get a kick out of the accolades that I'm getting. It's really funny. I've done some really great things in my life, but this thing, it is really it struck a chord in a lot of people, and I'm just so thrilled and so fortunate and privileged to have had the chance to deal with this subject matter.
It's great. And what it's available everywhere, so you can watch it wherever Netflix is in the market. Yeah.
Netflix, you can get it. Yeah, you can get it anywhere, no matter where you are in the world. If you have a Netflix account.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, that's awesome. All right. Well, I mean, look, I urge everyone to check this out, to check out Sunday Best on Netflix. I've watched it. I'm going to watch it again over the holidays.
Yeah.
I love talking to you, man. I really appreciate you coming on. Hopefully we can do some stuff together in the future as well. And, so definitely really appreciate it.
Well, next time we'll talk about the work that I do in copyright termination and recapture, because
Excellent.
I am the Robin Hood of the music side of the entertainment business. I terminate contracts for people who assign their rights away early in their careers before they had the leverage to make the best deals for themselves. So I'm not the person that Warner, Sony, and Universal love to see coming in the door, but I'm friendly. I'm friendly enough where they still accept me.
That'll be a great conversation, because there's a ton of tools out there that I get to see and deal with. And I don't think any of them have people with the background and knowledge that you have, particularly with artists on it, which I always think is an enormous differentiator. I sometimes can't believe the number of companies that have been funded that scoop out rights and do this and do that around AI, whatever it might be, and the folks don't know the landscape or the ecosystem of music, which I still think is an incredibly important piece of the equation to know if you're out dealing with these things. So let's definitely do that.
Absolutely. Anytime. Just let me know.
Love talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Seth, not even a problem. Just give me a call and I'm there.